Morning.
Good morning. Sorry
Hey,
about the
Leslie.
late start.
So you're the suspect from all the emails.
Yes. It's always fun to see the person who's been filling your inbox with
Right?
redundant messages, isn't it? Okay. Just checked and made sure that your poll is there. Do either of you want to practice screen sharing or anything? We are live, just so you know, but I don't think you probably don't need to because we already did during the practice session, but just in case you want to.
I don't see the poll as a option. So is that something you will have to run?
Yeah, I will launch that for you, and I do have them already loaded in there.
Is everybody can listen to me right now? What
Yep.
we are discussing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you well, yeah. If you want to send me any messages off this meeting, you can feel free to do email because I'm doing check-in email.
Thank you.
Just need to check that everything else is starting okay.
Does my background look correct, Suhag?
Yeah, looks good.
So the other thing I was going to mention was that I will keep an eye on the Q&A in the Whova app.
Okay.
And I assume you want to hold those till the end, till you're done with your presentation.
That would be wonderful.
And then I'll just.
So there is no chat window here, is there?
That's correct. So the
Okay.
organizers, the host committee and board decided that they wanted to really drive people to the
Okay.
conference app to use the Q&A and chat over there.
So finally, today is the wrap-up day, huh?
Yes. Yep, we're done. There's a closing session from 11:15 to 12:15, and then the conference.
Nice. Y'all done a good job. I think I like the platform. I've used 2 other platforms and I've grown to like this one. It
Yeah.
has some good features that I thought I've grown to like it.
It definitely has some good features. There's a little bit of awkwardness here and there because
Oh
certain
yeah, it's
features
always
aren't
there, right?
quite designed to be used the way we're using them, but that's been
I
here.
didn't know this industry existed up until this whole COVID hit us. I didn't know
Oh, right.
everybody was using it.
The virtual platforms. Yeah. It's been interesting for us because I don't think we did either other than as apps. Lots of conferences use apps now,
Makes
but I
sense.
think we didn't realize that there were platforms that were much more fully built out than apps. And then a lot of the app platforms have actually kind of expanded what they can do. Which is
Okay.
impressive.
So Leslie, can you allow us to share my screen at the moment?
Yes.
Thank you.
I can. Sorry about that. There you go. Oops. There you go.
Okay. You're able to see my screen okay?
Yep, looks perfect.
Awesome. I'm gonna stop the video and come back to it for the Q&A, Leslie.
Okay.
You let us know whenever you want us to move forward and we'll begin.
Okay. Yeah, I'll probably wait until just a
No
tad
rush.
after 9:30 to let people get in.
Thanks.
Yep. Welcome, everyone. We'll just give folks a few more minutes or a few more moments to sign in, and then we'll get started. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started now. Welcome, everyone, to Building Economic Resiliency with ArcGIS Urban. Our presenters are Suhag Kansara and Brett Keast, and we'll go ahead and get started now. Thank you, everyone. Oh, and we will encourage you to submit your questions via the Whova app. In the agenda, if you click on this item, you'll see there's a Q&A section, and you can submit them right in there. Thanks.
All right. Leslie, can you hear me okay? And can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everyone. We are very thrilled to be here today. First and foremost, we would like to thank the NEARC leadership for giving us the opportunity to present here today, and we so greatly appreciate it. First, I want to talk about some introduction here. To talk about myself, my name is Suhag Kansara. I am the owner and CEO and lead the GIS for ViewPro. I come with 20 years in the field of urban planning and now building GIS solution built specifically around planners' needs. My role today would be to provide you with a clear understanding about two things. Number one, discuss role of technology, ArcGIS Urban in particular, in city planners' daily workflow. And secondly, share options about how to implement ArcGIS Urban in your organization. And with that, I would like to bring up Brett, and we'll kick it off.
Okay, are you covering the first slides, Suhag, or want me to?
You wanna do the introduction, and then I'll
Okay.
begin.
All right. Well, I'm Brett Keast. I'm the owner and CEO of two companies. The first is Kindig Keys Collaborative. We are an urban planning firm that works nationally. We do any type of plan project for cities and counties and other local governments, and then also writing zoning and land development codes. So Suhag and I partner on many projects, and what I'm going to be talking to you about today is a project that we worked on specifically in Littleton, Colorado, as we were writing their unified land use code and specifically the regulations for their historic downtown. So I look forward to sharing my comments with you in a little bit.
Thank you, Brett. All right, we'll begin. Um, just a couple of thoughts here is I would highly encourage that you ask and those submit those questions on the Whoa platform. Unless we learn about what you have in mind, we won't be able to satisfactorily answer those questions for you. So we have dedicated about 20 minutes worth of time just for Q&A session. So we are really looking forward to hear from you. So feel free to send those along, and Leslie will be helping us out. So what would you expect today in next hour and 15 minutes? So today we have two urban planners in the speaker panel today. We both come with a unique take on the new technology called ArcGIS Urban. Myself, I will be providing a technical demonstration first about ArcGIS Urban's key features, and then Brent will come in and will discuss in a consultant capacity how he managed to extend ArcGIS Urban features to achieve cities' desired goals with a case study example, and I'll wrap it up to discuss implementation of ArcGIS Urban technology. We both come with close to 50 years in the field of urban planning with varied level of focus. And our experience range from working for cities and local government to working as consultants with cities and local government to finally building software solutions for cities and local government. And out of this experience, we can collectively say that we learned that GIS is not being leveraged to its fullest potential or in the way it was meant to be. And there are many reasons for that. For instance, lack of funding and technical resources, particularly tier 4s and 5s. Sometimes they don't even have any GIS staff on board, so they kind of suffer from that particular issue. Technology is also changing at a very rapid pace. So it's hard to keep up. And I'm sure you all have observed in last 5 years specifically, every 6 months, there's a piece of technology that comes up that we are required to quickly learn and implement it. And it's particularly hard for various local governments. But more importantly, we noticed that there were no tools specifically designed around city planners. And hence what we saw that there is a need in the market to create solutions that is designed for everyday use by the city planners and truly fill the gap that exists in the industry. So looking into the future, we expect more focused and customized approach towards technology-based planning solution, such as some of the solutions we created called GeoZone that automates zoning for zoning-based workflow in an inherently 3D web-based application. But truly speaking, in a planner capacity, I'm very thrilled about ArcGIS Urban. It's a first product from Esri in its 50 years of history that is specifically designed for city planners, which is very exciting. But since the introduction of summer of 2019, Urban is able to offer some really neat features around scenario planning capability. So I'm looking forward to do a brief demonstration to you guys. But before we begin, we'd like to learn more about your current understanding about ArcGIS Urban. So with that, I would like to put a poll question here. Leslie, if you could help us out here, please. All right, so if you could just take a few seconds to tell us about your familiarity around ArcGIS Urban, we'll greatly appreciate it. And I'll keep it open for next 15 seconds or so. This will help us understand the baseline expectation and where you all stand with your understanding of urban. So maybe we can try to um, work around and make sure that our demonstration is speaking to you. That's great. All right. Thank you so much. So we have some super users as well. So that's great. I'm looking forward to hear from you guys. Thank you so much. All right, so with that, let's go to the demonstration part. So let's say, what is ArcGIS Urban? So ArcGIS Urban is a web-based scenario planning application for planning and design professionals. Urban can ensure data consistency and collaboration across teams and plan areas and move traditional policy interventions to a more analytical and a scenario-driven process in 3D. Urban is made up of three main components: projects, plans, and indicators. And we'll go through these components in the demo today. And that's kind of the heart of the entire application. So hoping that by the end of the uh, quick presentation, you will have a fairly good understanding. Also, Urban is inherently 3D in nature. So the textured mesh that you're looking at is taken from one of our business partner called NEARC. Urban also supports textured and unfeatured content. So if you have a LiDAR data or building footprint data, then we will be able to make use of that as well. With the latest enhancements to the Urban's data model that was released in the fall of 2020, we have now added a content filter based on users login. This determines what you can see in the list or directly in the map itself. So you can further filter by just your own content, or content shared across the organization, or the public content. For the background purposes, for illustration today, I'm going to illustrate Boston. I'm going to use the example of BPDA, which is Boston Planning and Development Agency, who's responsible for planning and economic development in the city. I thought Boston is a great example because it's tucked into the northeast of the states, and most of the users logging in today are also from the area. So I think you may find this a lot more relevant. So with that, let's dive into the indicators. Now, tracking indicators is important because that impact planning decisions. And in Urban, indicators are spatial visualization of any demographic or analytical data that a city might use when making planning and development decisions. Any data needed to inform the decision-making process can be added as a custom indicator like this one. So we are showcasing flood risk across Boston. Uh, and we Urban also comes with a lot of pre-configured indicators out of such a outside of the box. So I'm going to walk you through that also, like population change, crime, and diversity. So you can bring them on at any given time. So kind of take it to the finish point for indicators. Basically, if you have your own custom data, that can also be brought in here as a unique custom indicator. And Brett will a little bit touch on that, how he managed to bring economic sensitivity model as an indicator into Urban. Let's turn on the active plan initiatives layer. So basically, plans are various initiatives taken up by a city. In this case, the BPDA puts their priorities into action through neighborhood planning initiatives, of which there are many across the city, as you can imagine, for the size of the city. And the purpose of these plans is to articulate broad community goals, as well as outline physical development opportunities and guidelines for these plan areas. In this contextual layer, we can see Imagine Boston 2030 initiative, which defines a vision for Boston leading up to its 400th birthday. Imagine Boston is designed to enhance neighborhoods, encourage the mixed-use core, support employment and housing growth, and create waterfront that sustains future generation. So obviously, to achieve all those objectives, a close collaboration with communities that informs neighborhood plans, and we need to meet those goals. And the city codifies these neighborhood plans through a local land use regulation. So let's take a first look at some of the land use planning concept for South Boston in the Dart Avenue land use plan. And we'll now slowly scroll to that area. So in Urban, we can edit those plans individually, and that will bring up additional functionality for authoring scenarios. We can simply go here, click those three dots and click edit. We can dive right into it. Urban uses a copy from the existing condition as a starting point in the plan. And within the selected parcel, you can also validate land use against any zoning layers that exist. So in this example, I'm going to take some parcels and show some new functionality around using a conceptual grid. But for that, I'll create a new scenario. Uh, and the new scenario is going to be based off an existing one. I'm going to go ahead and call it a future land use grid. Scenarios correspond to your username. So unless I've shared a plan with a colleague or have scenarios unlocked, they cannot edit my work, but they could make a copy of it and edit it. So there are certain checks and balances processes in place. Now in our scenario, we can turn off some of the existing building layer to get a better view. And then we'll be selecting parcel for the area that we want to work with. We also have certain advanced selection tools, and here in the toolbar, I'm going to showcase that. There are a few options for merge, split, erase, and draw new parcels. But I'm going to choose the option called grid option. So the advanced selection tools are right there, but I'm going to choose the grid option. Now this will automatically slice up my large parcels so I can generate some conceptual scenarios. And the land use in urban is defined as a percent distribution of space use types like hotel, retail, office, etc. And these land uses or land use types are represented as colors in the scenario here. Now we have added easy to use paint tool for applying new land use types with the scenario. And paint tools are very commonly used in the industry today. This lets you choose from palette of different land use types very easily. In this case, we can add a general commercial around the rail station and some mixed residential and commercial in between them. And as you can see, it starts to create some other alternative scenarios very, very easily. It's as used as just like a sketch tool. You can just simply go around it. Now, when creating new scenarios, these scenarios, we can choose from a list of our default land uses, or you can create your own. So in this case, each scenario is looking at land use options to increase housing and job opportunities. So once the land use plan is in place, the BPDA is then able to enforce these plans through zoning and the development review process. So let's next take a look at a zoning plan in the South Boston area. And I'm gonna on the Dorchester Avenue Planning Initiative. So now we are jumping on to the other important part. How can we run initiatives or drive various different, understand the current zoning constraints and what can we build within those constraints? So Dorchester Avenue is a unique one. It was launched to proactively reimagine a 21st century industrial use corridor. So once I configure it here, you will be able to see it's right outside the core Boston area. And it's primarily industrial with single or double story, those industrial warehouse type of buildings. And in this plan area, we can take a look at the zoning capabilities of urban and how it may support a targeted approach to implementing zoning changes. Now, as you can see here, typically the zoning codes, what we have seen in real world is there are thick legal documents that can be very hard to interpret, but ArcGIS Urban can be calibrated to the local zoning code and applied in a specific scenario planning and translating the zoning code in 3D. And now what we can do is we can go to a different scenario. If no changes are made to the current zoning, we can see likely development pattern. So the moment we change to the existing condition. And then a common exercise is to look at how existing zoning should be changed to accommodate growing housing and job needs. So now you can see what the current zoning will allow to build in that corridor. Now we can base these scenarios off of existing zoning. If all the development were to occur, what a proposed zone change may look like. And we can then use these scenarios to engage in a discussion with both citizens and developers on how much is enough or how much more is needed. Now I'm going to take you to a proposed scenario and what you're looking at. And the development potential changes dramatically with the new height limits and new building uses. Now we can select a parcel and there are various different plausible building forms, and they are all based on the underlying zoning constraints. Now I can test a change to zoning in the scenario. If I select this proposed zone here called .zone 3, we can open it up and modify it. Each zone in this plan area will have more detailed parameters outlining the FAR, allowed space use type, maximum building heights, etc. We can, yeah, and we can change the max height from 200 to 400, FAR from 10 to 15. We can save the work and see the change in the scenario happening instantaneously. And this is a very cool exercise. You change the parameters, you check it, and see how it performs. And I'm going to also talk about indicators in just a minute, but we exactly know how many jobs we added or how much population we added. All right. Fantastic. Now, moving on, all the parcels, as I said, will update according to the new parameters. And in addition to modeling zone types and land use type, Urban can model out building types as well. And the building types respond to the underlying parameters automatically as well. In this case, seeing a change in the building height, and we can quickly see happening. Now, what you're looking here is a bunch of capacity matrix. So building types are defined as a mix of space uses, one of many, and therefore we can validate across zoning and land use plans based on the space use. And these space uses as defined drive new downstream capacity matrix relating to population, parking, trips, emission, energy use, etc. And Urban provides these metrics both at the scenario and individual parcel level. And we can even download them and make edits to it. And we can download them also in Excel spreadsheet. So simply come in here and I can make the selection and download that into an Excel spreadsheet. It will open up in my separate screen now. So I will bring this up here. And what you will notice that each column in the spreadsheet represents a scenario in the plan. The rows are denoting the matrix as well as areas per zone and space use types. Now, the best part about having this data in a spreadsheet format is all these variables, of course, they're taken from a standard type of understanding of how parking is calculated and other open areas are calculated, but those logic can be changed in the Excel spreadsheet. So if your region has specific numbers or matrix that works only for your region, you're more than welcome to change that. So it's not set in stone. That's the point I'm trying to make. Now let's go to creating a space use types. Now, many scenarios are not only form-based, but can be run by testing different space use variation. So in Urban, you can create and manage your own space use type. So in this case, let's create a new space use type for this plan called a boutique hotel and give it high ceilings. And then on the back end of the space use type, we can assign coefficients related to parking and jobs. And this is what I was referring to earlier. You can change the coefficient that fits your specific community requirements. And now let's create a building type. Building type is it's kind of a new spaces type with number of floors. So building types can have multiple settings related to their form on the parcel and alignment. And when you're finished, this will now be available across the plan to others that may be working as well. So it can be applied to a parcel. As I mentioned, one of the key enhancements to the zoning plans has been addition of the sky planes. And this has been added very, very recently. So let's talk about sky planes now. In this example, we will be able to override one of the parcel and change the height of the parcel and turn on the zoning envelope to see what's the allowed building form. And this will allow us to visualize the constraints set by the new sky plane. So sky plane can be applied based on the parcel edge. Here I'll choose the front street edge, set a vertical offset of 50 feet, and angle of departure at 45 degrees. And we'll add a residential tower, and you will see the effect happening instantaneously. The building type will react by offsetting itself to build as high as possible. So if you change the angle of the sky plane, the building will automatically readjust. Right? I'm going to just reset that parcel to cultural use, but you can change angle anytime and instantaneously it will turn into a building form. All right, let's go and let me change that to the cultural use. All right, let's talk about some of the evaluation tools. In addition to scenario planning tools, Urban has some of out-of-the-box spatial analysis tools. This includes shadow, measurement, and slice. And the new one that's just been added is called line of sight analysis tool. We can use this tool to understand the view from a building in our proposed scenario to downtown Boston. You can set an observer location and add sight lines, which note obstruction points in red and green colors. Uh, there is also a new addition called street level imagery that has been developed with one of the Azure's business partner called Mapillary. It will allow you to see side-by-side comparison with the existing condition. It works very much like a Google Street View, but in this case, your proposed scenario will be put next to an existing building scenario. Now, these scenarios can be published, very important, when they are ready to be shared internally or with the public. You choose which layers you wish to publish, and those layers will appear in the Overview tab. Along with the matrix for the whole plan, if you choose to, we can do so too. And now we can select and view the full build-out scenario we published to the Overview for sharing purposes. All right. In addition, there is also an ability to set a public comment period directly on the plan or project. And this can, we can also designate a particular time period if we have to. And once activated, user who are viewing the plan can make categorized comments per scenario. And this feedback layer is basically using Hub annotation layer for seamless management on the back end. And the comments not only are threaded together, but can also be downloaded later for further analysis purposes. Right. And this is a very important part of this because Urban community engagement feature was developed or launched earlier this year. And this works very well with other Azure's ecosystem, particularly ArcGIS Hub. So if you have any planned initiatives, then you can make ArcGIS Urban work in tandem with ArcGIS Hub as well. And the last, let's go to projects. Projects in Urban, they are related to building permits as well. Like many cities, Boston is starting to visualize key projects in context using 3D submission. In this case, BPDA receives a Rabbit model for this project in Washington Village. And recently they have added very simple project editing capability that I believe you will appreciate it. Let's go ahead and sketch here a brand new project, this part, and we call it as sketch. So you can imagine before just having cocktail napkins to make some sketches, but here we can see our initial editing capability target, and there are additional capabilities are planned for spring of 2020. Now here, once it's been added, we can simply take a freehand sketch and start drawing, and it will create predetermined building heights in 3D. We can even add a second level. Each model can be moved. Each individual node can also be adjusted that suits your requirements. And now you can just tilt it and look it into 3D. We can even add other assets like trees, cars, street furnitures to give it a realistic understanding. Of course, all the analysis tools like line of sight will also work for projects. All the objects can be scaled, rotated as per the user's wish. Great. Now, projects are also utilizing scenarios and the same method behind the sharing and access. And any edits made to the project will automatically be represented in the overview. And you can also allow a comment period, much like with zoning and land use plans, which is very interesting because if you have a large development happening in your area and you want to get certain comment feedback from the citizen, this is a great way to have those initiatives in place. Right? I guess we have covered pretty much kind of a high level 100-foot kind of overview of what ArcGIS Urban has to offer. Of course, I can go on and on, but we will move forward and talk about specifically how we managed to take ArcGIS Urban and use it specifically in the case of City of Littleton, Colorado, and how we managed to bring economic sensitivity model into it. Let's see. Okay, so now that you have a clear understanding about various ArcGIS Urban features, hopefully um, uh, that you have a better understanding. We'd like to spend next 15-30 minutes talking about a real world case study, as I said. But before we move forward, I would like to share a poll. So Leslie, if you don't mind putting up a poll on the screen. Thank you. I think this is the same poll, Leslie. Can you try the second? Thank you.
Sorry about that. I'm having
No
a hard
problem.
time. Oh, wait, here we go. Sorry. Couldn't find my second poll. Here it is.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So we'd like to learn based on the demo that you just took a look at it. And I know many of you have not heard much about it, but what do you think is the level of skill sets required to use ArcGIS Urban? Yeah, I'll give it a few more seconds. All right, we can close the poll, Leslie. Thank you. All right. So we have some hard to operate. I was looking for more mediums and easy to use, but I can understand. I think there are a lot of industry jargons as well, and that might make someone more nervous. But thank you so much for your kind response. With that, back to you, Brett.
Okay, very good. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay, very good. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, Suhag covered a lot of territory there. I think what he illustrates is the robustness and the power that is available to you. He showed you Boston because that's a model that's advanced pretty well. But I think it's fair to say that this is relatively scalable. I think that's important. So depending on where you work, or if you work for a local government, or what that might be, you may be thinking this is overwhelming, or it's too expensive, or too difficult to get onto, but it's really not. Think about where GIS has come in the last 10, 15, and even when I started 30 years ago, it's just light years ahead of where it was. And so I think it's a very short period of time that we will all be working in this environment for nearly everything that we do. What I would like to transition to show you is of an application that we built, Suhag and I, for the city of Littleton, Colorado. And if you're not familiar with that area, being from the Northeast, this is, as you see here on the map, kind of just south of downtown Denver. On a good day without traffic, it's only about 20 minutes to downtown. It's served by light rail lines going into downtown. This is a really livable, beautiful, nice, built out suburb of the Denver area. You can see there on the screen, it's been one of the best small cities in America, most visited, greenest city. So all these things really represent this place and the values that the folks in this place hold. And so all those values really presented themselves as we were getting into the process. We began by doing a vision for the community about a year and a half ago. Very participatory. They're a very engaged community, well educated, and also very active in their public life. And so there was no shyness about what they'd like to see for their community. So we built a vision, And then off of that vision, we built the comprehensive plan. That was adopted about 9 months ago. And right on the heels of that adoption, we started to develop the Unified Land Use Code. Before we did that, though, I'm going to focus on downtown because downtown, like in many places, is very near and dear to them, very special place. And they were seeing some things happening that was not their preference. So I'm going to give you a little bit more context about that. See here. This is one of the images from the comprehensive plan that just tells you a little bit more about the place. You know, it's got a very high satisfaction rating of residents that really enjoy the quality of life. It's got a lot of historic landmarks, and I'll show you some photographs. Lots of parks and trails along river, a greenway. So it's just a very beautiful community. Just a few images of the place here. Again, looking at a lot of the history in the downtown. So you can tell that this has been well maintained. It's been protected over the years. And as you might imagine, they want to continue to protect the special character of their downtown area. However, their zoning did not work to their advantage. There are several developments that have taken place that I refer to as character spoilers. You know, these are very large scale buildings relative to what's on the ground today. Modern buildings that are in and of themselves are beautiful, very nicely done, nicely designed projects, but within the character, they don't necessarily fit. The images on the left is a gorgeous mixed use project, but it sits on the hill and it's on the fringe of downtown. And so it got a lot of pushback from the community. However, the hands were tied of the public officials because they didn't have good plan policies and they didn't have good regulations that can help control the type of character that they were going to realize. You can see on the right-hand side, you've got some kind of original town neighborhoods, modest housing, but very livable. And within that, you can see some very large apartment and townhome style development that has come in. Again, in and of themselves, they're nice projects. They contribute to the community, but they're juxtapositioned here within a historic neighborhood really brought this topic to the fore, and people realize that we've got to do something if we want to preserve the value and integrity of our downtown area and continue to be a highly livable place. Their zoning, they had a lot of different zoning districts, but interestingly, there wasn't a whole lot of difference between the standards within those districts. And many of them didn't have any height restrictions, or they had very forgiving setbacks or floor area ratios, etc. So there wasn't a lot of control mechanisms to really control not only the design, but the scale and the form and the massing of buildings relative to what surrounds them. Dramatic changes in density that are permitted anywhere from 8 units per acre to 75 units per acre, which you just know if you're not used to dealing with densities, it's very, very dramatic. So these were the districts that were encountered at the beginning. And so we set out to kind of help them craft new regulations, and we decided to utilize 3D to do that. These are some images that we utilize to facilitate public input. This project started and immediately COVID reared its head. And so we were unable to travel again. We were there for the first, well through the plan process and for the first meeting of the Unified Land Use Code. And then everything has been virtual since. So we facilitated these sessions using Zoom, and we're able to show graphic images and to use polling just like we've done here to ask them, is this scale or these building types, the massing of buildings within this neighborhood, are they appropriate or inappropriate? And so we got polling information. We were able to utilize that to really backstop some of the scenarios that we were looking at in working with the community to decide what's appropriate, what fits where, and then writing the regulations for them. I think perhaps one of the most important things that we did was we really used some economic sensitivity modeling. And that was very, very helpful as another component. It wasn't just about public input and public perception and opinions about scale and things, but this community is very in tune with economic sustainability, making sure that development that happens brings the population, brings the jobs, brings the tax base to balance their tax base. Right now, they are relying on retail sales, which you can imagine with a lot of things shutting down, that's really had an impact on them economically. So we looked at, you see on the table on the right, we looked at different scenarios of 3-story buildings with kind of a typical parking ratio, with reduced parking. Suhag was showing modeling a building that then has the second or third story that is stepped back from the setbacks. So we were able to look at different alternatives about how far upper stories are stepped back and what impact that had on the internal rate of return. So you can see some of those scenarios at the bottom were a negative IRR, and some of them were positive. And so again, that was very important. And we really had this tussle back and forth between, needing to have a certain amount of scale to make the project pencil, but then the sensitivities of the public at the same time as to height and the impact that that would have on the character. So what we realized was that parking is a major determinant. I think you kind of realize that we always call it a land hog. I mean, it consumes a lot of the lot. And in a downtown area, that's particularly important because we don't want, large surface parking lots that really disrupt the walkability and the urban character and feel of the downtown area. And building height was also a sensitivity measure, just to make sure we get ample square footage or leasable floor area to make these projects feasible. They utilize, information from locally in terms of constructability and cost factors and things of that nature. And we're able to look at different scenarios, development scenarios, and the impacts of those. And then we got responses from the public. So we did kind of a full range of analysis utilizing GIS in 2-dimensional and then transition to 3-dimensional. So this is the downtown area that you can see here on the photograph. So we really wanted to understand the place and what we were dealing with. So we modeled the impervious cover. We used different shades of blue to help understand the intensity of building cover. So those that are darker have a greater amount of building coverage than those that are lighter. We also looked at the uses that are on the ground by color coding them. And to understand, the yellow areas are residential, you have red that are commercial, green are kind of mixed use areas, public uses and what have you. Then we looked at the zoning. Interestingly, if you compare that with the previous slide, zoning is kind of draped over areas that are much different in their use, and they're also much different in their physical character, meaning the scale of buildings, their disposition, where they sit on a lot, their relationship to one another and to the street. But zoning didn't really take that into account. So that was our job. They had some earlier design districts, some from work that had been done to help craft design guidelines for the downtown area. These were the boundaries of those areas. But when we did the analysis, looked at existing land use, considered the future land use from the comprehensive plan, and really looked at the existing character, we came up with these as being the character districts. The yellow areas, again, being kind of a mostly single family, some attached housing. The red areas are along Main Street, where it's all commercial, walkable, parking on the street or off-site, or even in a structure or tuck under. And then the purple areas were kind of mixed, where there was a variety of different use types and building types. And then we also started to look at 3D and looking at the context of the existing buildings. And we modeled those that are in white. Now we did this with SketchUp, and then those were imported into the urban model so that we could look at, you know, realistic building footprints and how they would apply on the land. And I will show you a little bit more about this. So the real value in doing the 3D model was to understand kind of the physical character and form of development as it exists today. We engaged the residents to try to help educate them and bring them along to understand what is it that contributes to the character that they recognize as being a special place in downtown. Why is that? What's the three-dimensional form that has brought them to that perspective or that opinion of their downtown area? And then able to look at alternative building types and forms and scale and massing and things like that to work back and forth with them, working with their Historic Preservation Commission, working with the Plan Commission, and with City Council, as well as the public, to work through all of these things and then be able to test different scenarios, similar to what Suhag was showing earlier. So it's just kind of a zoom in. This was fairly crude, but it served our purpose. You know, we have the aerial image underneath to show streets, but what we're after here was to really look at the gray buildings that exist today, their height, their scale, their coverage, and then importing the SketchUp models, which are in white, to kind of show how they relate and how they can contribute to the pattern and character without being the character busters, as I was referring to earlier. And then also looking at the feasibility of these buildings. We don't want to write regulations if what is regulated can never be built. So if we are overly restrictive in terms of height or scale or what can be built, we've done no good, because properties are going to sit because the developers know rather quickly if their project is feasible or not. So we worked with Economic Planning Systems, which is an excellent firm. This is an example of their work, that they built very robust and sophisticated models to look at a wide range of sensitivity and different scenarios. So again, this is where we were testing different parking ratios for different building types and different character areas. We were looking at height and the step back, building step backs, and how that impacted the feasibility of projects. So council was very, very, very in tune with this. They understand inherently that these projects have to be economically viable for the private sector, but at the same time, they have to work for the public sector, not only on the aesthetic character, but also economically for the community. So these were important components of this project. So building 3D consensus. So the current building models kind of provide us a baseline for context. You walk up and down the streets, you drive through, but you don't get the chance to really look at your downtown area from a bird's eye view and really understand the patterns that emerge and the heights of building, the relationship between buildings. And so that really helped people to understand the bulk and the scale relationships throughout the downtown area and why these character areas really made sense. Then we're able to do concept testing, infill development, looking at different height and scale and a way that we can transition. At some point, all these character areas have to come together. And so we have to figure out how to transition them. So we were able to utilize 3D modeling to help people understand that we can have two different uses, we can have two different heights, but if we use the bulk plane or other type of analysis tool, we can show how we can be very sensitive and compatible among development. Economic viability, as I just said, looking at building use types and mixtures, parking and building heights to realize what's feasible. And then visualization, probably as much as anything, the ability to visualize helped this process for residents, particularly, to see exactly what we're talking about. So not only having numbers and tables and text on pages as we're writing regulations, which nobody can really understand what that means in real world terms, but by being able to use a 3D model, we were able to better illustrate, here's what the regulations would provide for. So you can see an example of a building in the top there that's got 4 stories, and the top 3 stories are stepped back from the first story, so we can transition and keep it very human scale. And this is what came out of that. These are some of the graphics that show different building types and how they are regulated, the different dimensions in terms of their setbacks, their heights, the upper stories that are stepped back, where they sit on a property, and how everything will be managed. So you can see by going through this kind of stepwise approach, we're able to educate and bring people along in their understanding. So by the time we get to this, they're like, okay, I see how this applies. The model kind of helped me visualize and better understand what will happen with these. So there were a lot of benefits from this. Just the market validation was very, very important. Understanding the long-term sustainability economically, but also in terms of the building character, the aesthetic character, wanting to preserve the historic integrity of this downtown area and the patterns that have been formed and existing for decades. Looking at building types, making sure those building types fit in with what's around them, the scale is appropriate, and they are feasible. And then working together to really build consensus around these different concepts and ultimately the regulations. And this all affected the decision-making cycle. So we went back and forth on meetings, had multiple Zoom calls with council members to really look at all of these different scenarios and to make decisions about, should it be 3-story, should it be 4-story? Are there some areas that are more appropriate for height than other areas? What are those sensitivities? So that was very helpful. We also built a project website, and the beauty of Urban is that you are able to publish it out in a browser. So we have this on a project website, and citizens are able to basically go in and play with it themselves. So that'll come up here in a moment. So they can start scanning around and looking at, their property in particular and what may be proposed next to their business or within view of their home. And then we were able to capture different snapshots along the bottom to help illustrate, particular areas that we were looking at. So this is much like what Suhag was showing earlier, but the white buildings are what we have modeled in here to really show that they are contextually appropriate, and the regulations will deliver this type of development. So I can click on any one of these little thumbnails along the bottom, and it'll basically take us right to that. So this was useful to really look at and hone in on some of the properties that were discussed most in our analysis, looking at them from different perspectives and street views. And as Suhag said, you can take this much further by putting skins on buildings and adding street furniture and vegetation and things like that to make them very that much more realistic. So all in all, we did this in pretty short order. This was probably stood up by Suhag, and well, I guess initially maybe about 30 days. So starting from scratch with no 3D imagery, and kind of built this up and then populating it with the models, looking at different character areas and so forth. We could have taken much, much further. We would have liked to, but we just didn't have the time on this project, given the timing that was necessary to get the downtown regulations adopted, which they are now adopted in Littleton. Um, and just budget. When we started scoping this project, we were going to do all this in SketchUp. And we very quickly realized that if you've worked in SketchUp much, it really gets bogged down if you try building large areas and lots of buildings. So this lent itself to utilizing this technology. And one of the key things now is that this model exists. When anybody proposes a development within downtown, they are required to submit a real scale building model that can be geographically referenced and placed on the site so that they can, kind of look at different analysis right in a public meeting with council and kind of give them the ability to see it before anything ever happens, it's ever built. So I will hand it back to you, Suhag.
Sure.
I guess
Thank
just
you.
in summary, this is a very, very powerful tool. It does not have to be massive, large scale. It certainly can be. It has the capacity to do that. But for doing small area studies, corridor studies, downtown or neighborhoods or other types of things like that, boy, it's a super powerful tool. And without it, it would have been more difficult for us to draft the regulations and to get them adopted. So with that, I appreciate your time. I hope this was valuable of seeing a kind of a case study example of how 3D was used to facilitate a process and to gain adoption of regulations for a downtown area.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody's with us. Just because we cannot have a chat here, feel free to kind of click a button called yes or raise hand. That means I know that we are still on the same page. So at least we know we can find a new way to communicate. But to move forward, we are almost wrapping up our session. So let me share with you what we have learned implementing Urbans since summer of 2019 that you may also find it useful. And there are a lot of preconceived notion in the industry that we would like to kind of address. Number one is most folks believe that you have to have a 3D base map data without which we cannot leverage Urban. In fact, it's a myth. I'll give you an example of Littleton. They had no LiDAR data, only building footprint with extruded height. Very simple basic data. But urban scenario planning tools have 3D capabilities already built into it. So whether you have 3D base map as a context layer or not, it's still going to work just fine. In fact, with City Engine, we can also download for free OpenStreetMap data and create a 3D base map in as little as 2 hours. So 3D data is not a prerequisite. Secondly, as a certified ArcGIS urban deployment company with a planning background, we very well understand your needs as city planners, and our well-trained staff can deliver and have delivered urban deployment in as little as 30 days. So 4 to 6 weeks turnaround is reasonable. You don't have to wait for 3, 4, 5 months before you can get your hands on to a real urban model. Number three, urban fits well with any community size. We have seen more interest from small to mid-sized cities. In fact, they are far more successful in integrating urban because they were able to quickly learn and put urban to test for real-world projects. So it takes a small area plan and a forward-thinking leadership, not so much as resources. And last, Urban is pre-packaged and built on ArcGIS Online environment. That means no software download or installation required, or setup help required from your IT shop. It's truly designed to log in and run with it within minutes without any outside technical help. And trust me, this is a huge advantage to us, many of those city staff and planners who have limited understanding about how IT really works. Of course, I can go on and on, but to respect time, let me come to the real point and the last point. What can consultants like ViewPro can do for you, or what is our primary role in this process? I'm going to clearly illustrate what is ViewPro's unique approach to implement urban in your organization. Now, there are three primary steps for a potential urban deployment. Number one, take the urban challenge. Now, there is a link that you see on my slide. I've asked Leslie to put a link in the Hua platform as well, so you will get access to it hopefully very soon. But Urban Challenge is a custom tool designed to better understand your needs. And let me expand that. It will help you revisit what Urban has to offer and its unique value adds to your organization. For instance, you got a first-hand understanding about how Urban really works, but you want to revisit how it can help you or benefit you, you can revisit those. But more importantly, it will help you identify your specific challenges based on your profession. For instance, we have potentially city planners or urban designers and GIS professionals who have tuned in with us. And you all have unique goals and requirements for your own purpose. And we would like to illustrate how ArcGIS Urban can help solve each of your concerns individually with the use of Urban Challenge tool. So we cannot stress enough that take a time and fill this out. You will yourself understand the value of how it could help you. And finally, get a 30-minute consultation. And let's talk about how urban can be integrated within your context. There are three possible options, and not all options are either required or applicable. For instance, Starter Kit is designed to help you get off the ground in as little as 30 days, including training and knowledge transfer. If you want to build a 3D base map using your LiDAR data, then you can leverage the deep dive into 3D data program. And the custom workflows are more designed to achieve multi-departmental workflow efficiency, such as connecting public works with the building permit and the planning department, all with a unique connector. It can all be done. So to achieve perfect planning workflow balance, we may be able to use other ancillary GIS products like GeoZone that I talked about, or you may already have other GIS products already in use with other vendors. We can find those perfect balance for you in order to increase your productivity. So allow us to help you find a perfect combination that will work for your needs. And with that, I would like to launch one last poll, if that's okay. Leslie, if you don't mind sending that across, I would really appreciate it. We just want to understand if you still feel that you need to learn more, or if you feel that urban is perfect for your needs and really want to talk about how can you implement for your organization. Uh, we are happy to provide you some basic understanding on it. All right, we can close the poll now. Thank you, Leslie. In conclusion, I'll say this. As a GIS enthusiast and an urban planner myself, we finally have a product after 50 long years from Esri. And since Urban's inception a year ago, Esri has added some phenomenal features that add so much value to our day-to-day workflow. And this is just the first year. Can you imagine what Urban 5.0 can do for us, or even 10.0 can do for us? For us planners, these are truly, truly exciting times. And I'll end with this. From one planner to another, or one GIS enthusiast to another, future of city planning is here. And now is the best time to embrace this technology tool. But Brett, I would like to bring you up here, and you want to share any concluding remarks?
Yeah, all I can do is talk from my personal experience. This project in Littleton was the first time I'd ever experienced this. Suhog had been doing lots of research and toying around with this that I expect each of you would be going through. So I didn't really know going into this project exactly how it was going to be used, what was going to be required, how far we could go with it. So being the first time, I think we, were successful in accomplishing at least a good number of our mission points. Now that we've had that experience, we'll be able to adapt and look at it in greater detail and start taking advantage of some of the other tools that are available to us. So it is doable for a project of relative scale for a small community. Littleton has a single GIS analyst, quite talented and capable. So she has kind of picked up on what we provided and has continued to build out this model to be across the city. And they're looking forward to getting some LiDAR data so that they can create roof pitches and things like that. In a small town, that's something that's very, very important. While extruding buildings to their actual building height was helpful for scale, if we're able to get all the roof forms and buildings that are even that much more realistic, it will help people visualize that much more. So I would encourage all of you to kind of continue to learn more about this. I'm not sure what your background might be or how you might see using this. Take advantage of the 15 minutes that Suhag's offering, just to have somebody that has been there, done that, experienced it, has a great knowledge about it, just to, from one planner or one GIS person to another, just to understand it a little bit more and how it might work in your particular field or position. So again, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. We have several minutes here that we can answer questions. So feel free to either chat within the app, I guess. Is that the best way to do this, Leslie?
Yeah, so we do have a few questions posted that I can read out to you. Let's see. The first one is,
Go ahead.
it seems like every brilliant urban model I see involves someone with experience with CAD or some 3D modeling to make the buildings pop. Our firm lacks that. So what can we do to make up for that knowledge gap?
So if I understand the question correctly, one has to require certain basic understanding of how to work with the 3D data. Is that how you read it, Leslie?
Kevin is actually on the meeting. If he wants to
If you
unmute himself
unmute
and
him,
clarify
that
it
would be
all,
great.
welcome.
Hey, yeah,
Hey,
it just
Kevin.
seems like you can get these basic kind of square blocky models, but every time you show a model that has, nice windows and
Mhm.
awnings and really looks nice, it seems to come from somebody either importing something from CAD or from a 3D modeling program or
Correct.
something.
Yeah.
So is
Excellent
there a
question.
better repository or a better way, or do you just have to build those skills because Urban doesn't have the ability to procedurally generate those kind of nice looking buildings?
I think so. I mean, excellent question. I'm going to showcase something to you very quickly.
While
Hold
he's
on.
doing that, I'll just tell you, like you, for many, many years, I didn't have that in-house skill either. I now do, because we do enough of this work that, it's necessary. But also, I have contracted with, people that do SketchUp modeling and visualization and things like that as sub-consultants on some projects. So we can kind of tap into their skills. So I can tell them, this is what we're trying to get across. This is what we're trying to show. Here's some examples, and having them help us build models. In fact, I'm getting ready to do that right now on the next phase of the Littleton project of helping to visualize how shopping centers can be converted into large mixed scale projects. And so utilizing SketchUp and then dropping that into the model, it's, I'll say, relatively easy. Suhag is the one that did it, but there are people out there that will help with that.
Correct. So I'll add this, Kevin. There are 3 different primary sources to generate 3D base map without much of outside help. Number one is there are partners out there, SV's business partners. You are looking at one of them. They provide such vertical imagery that provides you realistic building elevations and that you can bring it into the map viewer or the urban model. The one that I was showcasing in Boston's example is using the exact same imagery that you're looking at right here. That's number one option. It comes at some cost. Second option is more of a free version of it. So that is, we can receive it directly from City Engine using OpenStreetMap data. So here, what I've done is I've taken the base map data directly from OpenStreet and I assigned a random elevation. I don't have control over the true elevation skin that you can provide, but it does provide you some sort of a basic understanding of how the form really looks like. And third, and most important thing is the regular building footprints. So those are the ones, this is also available for free from OpenStreet, but it does not obviously have much characteristic to it. So these are the free and free version and the paid version. But the final option could be your own LiDAR data. So if you have a LiDAR data, there are tools within Esri that you can take and create realistic looking mesh data, the one very much like what you're looking at, but with roofs, with more details, more windows and everything of that sort. So that's another option. Does that kind of help you clarify?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Okay, we have another question from Robert. How much setup is there to get to the point where you started this presentation, i.e. to set up the zoning you're building from, and can that be done via existing data or tables? I can foresee there would be a ton of work to get there, but can I base it from a spreadsheet of zoning densities or something similar?
So a great question. The two parts answer to this. Number one, yes, it does take a little bit of setup time, but good part is once you set it up correctly, changing zoning or parameters is extremely easy, as you may have noticed. The setup time could be anywhere between 40 hours or so, maybe 60 hours, depending on how complicated and intricate the data is. But once you set it up, and let's say you have a change in zoning or parameters, is as good as replacing with a table to a table or a spreadsheet to a spreadsheet. So setup time can be a little bit, but maintaining it over a long period of time, that process is relatively very simple and very intuitive. Um, we believe that typically the way we have seen most cities work is they do a small area plan, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 square mile worth of an area with 4 or 5 zones for a particular planning purpose. Once that is been done, implemented, and learned from it, then we expand to the entire city scale. So that the staff itself can also have a better knowledge transfer because of the one project is already done. And that kind of limits the unknown part of how to handle this. But yes, a little bit of a setup time, but it's only one time deal and maintenance is relatively very easy.
Some
Good
of them are
question.
pretty easy relative to setbacks, just looking at the setbacks that are in each of your different zoning districts and typing those into urban. Um, Sometimes zoning ordinances don't have densities or the densities are not realistic. So in our case, we actually model out the densities so we know exactly what densities are able to be achieved for different districts. Some ordinances have FARs, so of course, if that's the case, you can just type those into urban as well. So one of the things that Suhag was showing you didn't work so well here because they didn't have any height restrictions in these neighborhoods. So if you try building a translucent or a transparent 3D building envelope, it continues to the heavens. So it's easier if you know your zoning ordinance says, it's a 45-foot height, and then you can see if a proposed building breaches that height. So yeah, you can take zoning data and kind of plug that in relatively simply.
Good question, though.
Great. I don't see any more questions posted on the Hoover app. I do want to just point out, I did post the link that Suhag referred to earlier in the description for this session. So you should be able to find that in the agenda in
Thank
case
you.
anybody wants to check that out.
Is it possible, Leslie, to maybe unmute everyone and maybe ask questions here in case they didn't get a chance to go to Huawei platform?
Yeah, what we've been doing is just suggesting that people do the little raise hand option, and then we can
Okay.
just recognize them, just so
That would
people
be
don't
great.
talk over each other. So yeah,
I
if anyone
understand.
has a question, feel free to click on the little raise hand icon, which you get to by clicking on participants to open up the participant list. And then you should see that option, I think, at the
Yeah,
bottom of
like
that window.
Cool. Yeah, feel free. I mean, we'll be here. I mean, my contact information, let me put that slide up so that You have that. It's hard for us to, let me see what screen I'm sharing. Okay. Um, we didn't get a chance to really connect individually, but if you have any questions or you want to get back with us, we highly recommend that drop us an email. We would love to learn more about you and what your background is and kind of have a professional chat. So feel free at any given time. Maybe we did a great job or maybe we just confused everybody, Brett. What do you say?
Well, I hope it's the former, not the latter. Let me ask this for those of you that are out there. Click on the raise hand if what we showed here is kind of directly applicable. If you work for a local or county government, if you are a planner or if you work with planners regularly, click on the raise hand just to kind of show us who's out there.
There you go.
Okay, there we go.
Rob, we'll just, do you want to say anything, Rob?
No, I was
Okay.
just trying to give some feedback. You guys were spinning, but I appreciate the presentation. It's interesting and it is directly applicable to what I do. So I can see the value. So thank you.
All right. Thank you for being here, Rob. Who do you work with, Rob, if you may ask?
I'm at the Rockingham Planning Commission in southeastern New Hampshire. So
All
we've done some amount of this, but not with this tool. So
what tools do you typically use in that case?
we use a large smattering of everything. Some amount of out of the box, some amount of community viz, some SketchUp, some playing
Great
with
thing.
LiDAR and doing extrusion. So we've
Wow.
sort of thrown everything against the wall.
Nice. At least you have a very talented staff who can work around various different technology platforms and still manage to bring it together. So that's awesome. I would say Urban has a lot of tutorials and videos also available. So if I were you, I will take advantage of those tutorials and get yourself acquainted with it. On YouTube, there is a 1-hour video that Brooks Patrick from SG talks about. I think it's a fantastic, refreshing video. Just like what we discussed for 15 minutes doing the demonstration, but he goes in much more depth. So check out some YouTube as well. It may help you.
Bill, I see you raised your hand. Is there any thoughts or perspectives that you offer? No? Okay.
Anybody else? I'm just going to lower hands so that if anyone else would like to raise their hand, or if you're not sure how to raise your hand, feel free to just unmute and share any thoughts or questions.
Okay, I've unmuted myself. This is Bill.
Okay.
I work for a county in upstate New York. We have no cities, actually. Our 2 largest villages are populations of about 5,000. But I think probably urban has some applicability for us.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, we showed you obviously a municipality. This is also if you do any type of small area planning or corridor planning, or just looking at rural development and impacts and things like that. There's still certain applications that could be useful for you.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Anyone else
we
have a question?
Very much appreciate all of you spending the time with us. Again, if we can help you in any way, reach out to us by email. We're happy to help or talk. And we appreciate the opportunity to be with you today.
Great.
Big
Thank
shout to you, Leslie. I know you've been working tirelessly behind the scenes, so we appreciate your patience with all of our questions, trying to make this a very successful event. And a big shout out to the board members at the NEARC. they have done a fantastic job here. So thank you so much for everything.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate your participation. So we're going to end a little bit early, everybody, but make sure to plan to come to the closing session that starts at 11:15. It's going to be a fun discussion about NEARC conferences past and future. Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye, guys.